You think working families in the 1970s needed fancy ingredients to put dinner on the table? Think again. Blue-collar kitchens served up hearty suppers that cost pennies but fueled 12-hour shifts, now vanishing fast. Let's dig into 60 working man's dinners from the 1970s that have disappeared. Stuffed shells with cottage cheese were the gentle dream of an Italian meal done Southern style. The shells were filled not with expensive ricotta, but with cottage cheese, seasoned with parsley, salt, and a touch of garlic. A jar of tomato sauce made the base, poured thickly over the top and baked until bubbling and fragrant. It was an American twist on an old-world favorite, created by moms who refused to let cost keep them from giving their families something special. The cottage cheese melted softly inside, creamy but light, soaking up the sauce's sweetness. It was filling, tender, and bright on the plate, a little taste of luxury without the price. On weeknights, when money was tight but love was steady, it was enough. It made the table feel like Sunday again. Working mothers built memories one baked dish at a time, turning what they had into what everyone needed. The first forkful was always a quiet one, just to savor the mix of tomato and cheese. Even the smallest kids could sense that this meal meant care. It was proof that joy could be homemade, that pride could be baked into pasta, and that even ordinary kitchens could create a moment of grace. Fatback. Just the name sounds delicious, right? Wrong. Fatback is basically just a slab of pure pig fat. This cut of pork was often used to flavor dishes or rendered into lard for cooking. In times of scarcity, fatback was a valuable ingredient because it added flavor and richness to otherwise bland meals. You could fry it up to make crispy bits or use the rendered fat for cooking just about anything. Fatback is the unsung hero of many Southern dishes, providing that extra bit of flavor that makes everything taste better. However, in today's world of lean meats and health-conscious eating, fatback hasn't quite kept up. It's the kind of thing that makes dietitians shudder, but still holds a nostalgic place in the hearts of many. While it's not as popular as it once was, fatback remains a key ingredient in traditional Southern cooking, and for good reason, it's delicious. Pork belly with cracklings is celebrated for its luxurious flavors and contrasting textures derived from the rich layers of meat and fat found in pork belly. The preparation process starts with scoring the skin and massaging it with a blend of salt, pepper, and aromatic herbs or spices to infuse flavor. The meat is slow roasted at a low temperature to render the fat and tenderize the meat, followed by a blast of high heat to crisp the skin into cracklings. This approach ensures the pork belly stays succulent, while the outer skin turns deliciously crisp. Often served sliced thickly and accompanied by applesauce or a cider reduction, this dish perfectly pairs the pork's richness with a touch of sweet acidity. The allure of pork belly with cracklings lies in the depth of its flavors and the satisfying interplay of tender meat with crispy skin. Few dishes command attention quite like a well-prepared crown roast. Traditionally served at homecoming dinners and holiday gatherings, it was the kind of dish that made guests stop and admire before the first bite. The ring of bone-in pork chops, arranged in a regal circle, was as much about presentation as it was about flavor. For families looking to impress without breaking the bank, the pork crown roast was a surprisingly economical choice. Pork was, and still is, one of the most affordable meats, and butchers often offered deals on bulk cuts. The apricot glaze, a key feature of this recipe, added just the right balance of sweetness and depth, while a bread-based stuffing packed the center for an even heartier meal. Preparing this dish took skill and patience. The roast had to be properly Frenched, tied, and slow-cooked to achieve that juicy, tender texture. But for many home cooks, the challenge was worth the reward. Unfortunately, as home butchering became a lost art and families shifted toward convenience meals, the crown roast started to disappear from dinner tables. Hamburger pie with mashed potatoes was shepherd's pie reimagined for the American table. Ground beef cooked with onions and vegetables filled the bottom of a glass baking dish, then got covered with mashed potatoes smooth as clouds. The top browned just slightly, turning golden and crisp at the edges. Each layer told a story: the meat of labor, the potatoes of care, the warmth of love. It was hearty enough for any appetite, but soft enough for even the littlest ones. Moms baked it when the week had worn everyone thin, knowing it would bring smiles without complaint. It was the kind of dinner that required no words, just seconds. The smell of gravy and potatoes lingered long after, a quiet reminder of comfort earned and shared. When the spoon broke through the crust, it released steam that carried the scent of home-cooked grace. The casserole dish always came back empty, scraped clean with gratitude. Each serving tasted like relief, rich, familiar, and dependable. It was the food of kindness, the kind that needed no decoration or praise, only the comfort of being together. Pickled pig's feet are exactly what they sound like. Pig feet that have been pickled in a vinegar solution with spices. This dish was popular in the South and among certain ethnic groups, offering a tangy, chewy treat that was often eaten as a snack or side dish. The process of pickling preserved the pig's feet, making them a practical choice in times before refrigeration. The vinegar and spices added a punch of flavor that helped mask the natural taste of the feet. Today, pickled pig's feet are more of a novelty than a common food item. They might still be found in some specialty stores, but they're far from a mainstream snack. It's a dish that has mostly fallen out of favor, but for those who enjoy it, it's a taste of nostalgia. Anchovy butter steaks are a bold culinary creation, blending the umami depth of anchovies with the rich flavors of succulent steak. Popularized in mid-20th century America, this dish caters to those who appreciate daring flavor combinations. The steak, usually a marbled ribeye or sirloin, is seasoned simply and seared to perfection. The anchovy butter, a mixture of softened butter, finely minced anchovies, garlic, and occasionally a hint of lemon zest or herbs, is then slathered over the hot steak. This compound butter melts into the steak, infusing it with salty and intense anchovy flavors that enhance the natural beefiness. Here, the assertive flavor of anchovies perfectly accentuates the steak's luxurious richness, crafting a dining experience rich in both taste and elegance. For decades, this dish was the definition of hearty, home-cooked comfort food. A cross between a hamburger and a meatloaf, Salisbury steak offered all the savory satisfaction of a beefy main course, without the expense of premium cuts. Smothered in a rich mushroom and onion gravy, it was often served alongside mashed potatoes, soaking up every last drop of its flavorful sauce. The origins of this dish date back to the late 19th century when Dr. James Salisbury, a physician, promoted chopped beef as a health food. But it wasn't until the mid-20th century that it became a household favorite, especially during the post-war years when ground beef was an affordable, versatile staple. Mixing the meat with breadcrumbs, eggs, and seasonings helped stretch a family's grocery budget, making it a go-to recipe for filling, cost-effective meals. The cooking process was simple yet rewarding. The beef patties were seared to lock in flavor, then simmered slowly in a rich, savory gravy made from beef broth, onions, and mushrooms. The rise of frozen TV dinners turned Salisbury steak into a mass-produced meal, often losing the homemade taste that made it special. With roots in Southern cooking, smothered chicken with onions and gravy is the perfect blend of crispy chicken, tender onions, and rich gravy that makes you want to go back for seconds, and maybe even thirds. Smothering food, whether it's chicken, pork chops, or beef, is an iconic Southern technique. The term smothered refers to cooking the meat slowly in its own juices or a flavorful sauce, often with onions or bell peppers, until it's tender and full of flavor. For this dish, the chicken is first browned to achieve a crispy golden skin before being smothered in sautéed onions and a gravy made from pan drippings. The result is a plate of food that's pure comfort. Gravy, of course, is the magic behind smothered chicken. Made from the fond left in the pan after frying, it's rich and savory, sometimes thickened with flour or cornstarch and seasoned to perfection. And those onions caramelize beautifully, adding sweetness and depth to every bite. Smothered chicken is like a hug on a plate, if that hug could also be crispy and covered in gravy. It's a dish that brings people to the table, no matter the occasion. Chicken Marengo holds a storied place in culinary history, famously prepared for Napoleon after the Battle of Marengo. This dish encapsulates the essence of victorious improvisation, using local ingredients available at the time. Chicken Marengo starts with chicken pieces sautéed in olive oil, braised with onions, garlic, and tomatoes, enriched by a splash of white wine that deglazes the pan, forming a robust sauce. Later additions often include mushrooms, and traditionally, it was garnished with fried eggs and crayfish, though these are less common today. The slow simmering melds all the flavors beautifully, allowing the tomatoes to break down and create a rich, savory sauce that complements the tender chicken perfectly. This dish exemplifies French provincial cooking, utilizing straightforward techniques and local ingredients to produce a dish rich in history and flavor. Bologna and potato fry-up was the dinner of last resort that no one complained about. Sliced bologna browned in a skillet until the edges curled, joined by cubed potatoes that fried crisp in the same pan. The onions went in next, sizzling in the leftover grease, filling the kitchen with that unmistakable scent of survival and satisfaction. Salt, pepper, and maybe a little mustard were all it needed to come alive. It was cheap, quick, and filling. The kind of meal that got families through those long stretches between paydays. Kids loved the salty flavor. Parents loved that it cost almost nothing and still felt like home. The sound of the spatula scraping the skillet became a kind of evening music, steady and sure. It was not a recipe so much as a rhythm, one born of practicality and pride. Cracklins, on the other hand, I can get behind. They're basically pork rinds, but with a fancy name. Finally, a normal, delicious meal that doesn't make your nose wrinkle. Cracklins were essentially the popcorn of the pork world. These crispy, crunchy bits were made from frying pieces of pork fat and skin until they puff up and become irresistible little nuggets. In the days when every part of the pig was used, cracklins were a way to make a snack out of what would otherwise be discarded. But here's the catch. These didn't really have a lot of benefits when you ate them. Yeah, nothing really screams healthy about eating deep-fried pieces of pork. Think of them as the porky cousin of potato chips. These days, you're more likely to find them in specialty southern stores than on your local supermarket shelf. Cracklins may not be the healthiest choice, but they're a tasty reminder of a time when people knew how to make the most of what they had. For decades, stuffed bell peppers were a staple of the American dinner table. They were practical, inexpensive, and packed with flavor. Families in the mid-20th century relied on simple, hearty meals, and this dish delivered. With just a few basic ingredients, ground beef, rice, tomatoes, and a well-seasoned filling, home cooks could create a meal that was both satisfying and visually appealing. Peppers were an accessible ingredient, easy to grow in backyard gardens and cheap at the store. Their natural shape made them the perfect edible container, eliminating the need for extra cookware. The filling, often stretched with rice to make the meat go further, was an economical way to feed a large family on a budget. Baked until tender, the peppers absorbed the savory juices, creating a dish that was both rustic and comforting. But as convenience foods took over, stuffed peppers began to fade from dinner rotations. The rise of prepackaged meals and fast food options meant fewer people were willing to spend time hollowing out peppers and slow-baking a homemade filling. Today, the dish still makes an occasional appearance in nostalgic cookbooks, but it's no longer a household staple. Roast chicken with stuffing and green beans is a meal that evokes family gatherings, holidays, and a sense of home. This classic dinner has long been a centerpiece of American dining, combining practicality with elegance. Roasting chicken is one of the oldest cooking methods, but by the 20th century, it became a weekly tradition for many households. Chickens were relatively inexpensive, easy to prepare, and, if seasoned and roasted just right, deliciously satisfying. The key to a perfect roast chicken lies in the balance: crispy golden skin on the outside and juicy, flavorful meat inside. Stuffing or dressing, depending on your regional preference, traces back to ancient Rome. By the time it reached American kitchens, cooks used bread cubes, herbs, and sometimes vegetables to create the savory, aromatic side we know today. While traditionally cooked inside the bird, many began baking it separately for a crispier texture, what some might call progress. Green beans complete this trio, often sautéed with garlic, almonds, or a touch of bacon. They brought a fresh, vibrant contrast to the richness of the chicken and stuffing. If you roast a chicken and make stuffing, you're not just making dinner, you're making memories. And for anyone who's ever had the leftovers, the memories taste just as good the next day. Turkey pot pie with biscuit topping was the warmest kind of thrift. Leftover turkey, peas, and carrots swam in creamy gravy beneath a golden crust of drop biscuits. It came from the hands of mothers who knew how to make one meal become two, maybe three. The oven turned the house into a bakery, filling it with the scent of butter and broth. When the spoon broke through the crust, steam rose up like memory. Each bite was soft, savory, and full of gratitude. It was food made for togetherness, for laughter between bites, for quiet seconds before bedtime. The flaky biscuits soaked up the gravy like sponges, making every taste better than the last. It was proof that the best meals were born not from plenty, but from purpose. The clatter of plates, the scrape of spoons, the sighs after second helpings, all of it felt like love taking form. Every bite carried effort, every crumb a piece of care. In the quiet after dinner, moms wiped the counter, knowing they had done enough. It was comfort sealed in crust, a reminder that joy could be baked from what was left behind. Chitlins, or chitterlings, are not for the faint of heart. We're talking pig intestines. Yep, you heard that right. These were cleaned, boiled, and sometimes fried up as a delicacy. Well, more like a necessity. Chitlins were a way to make sure no part of the animal went to waste, especially during lean times. They were also sometimes filled with forcemeat to make sausage, and intestines from other animals, such as cow, lamb, goose, and goat, were also used for making chitterlings. This strange delicacy was a traditional food of the southern United States that spread nationwide with the Black migration. These were taken off our dinner tables for better or worse. It's the kind of dish that makes you appreciate how far food has come and perhaps makes you grateful for modern refrigeration and food safety standards. Beef bourguignon is a cornerstone from Burgundy, involving marinated and slow-cooked beef chunks, typically tougher cuts like chuck, bathed in red wine, usually Burgundy, to tenderize the meat over several hours. This hearty stew is fortified with onions, garlic, and carrots, and enhanced with sautéed mushrooms and crisp lardons. Historically, this method likely evolved as a means to tenderize and enrich less desirable cuts of meat. The stew develops a rich, deep umami flavor from the Maillard reaction, which occurs as the beef browns, and the complex flavors intensify as the wine slowly melds with the herbs and vegetables. The slow cooking process not only enriches the stew's flavor, but also fills the kitchen with an inviting aromatic warmth, making beef bourguignon synonymous with comforting, rich French culinary tradition. Before slow cookers and instant meals, there was fricassee, a dish that turned simple ingredients into something extraordinary. This creamy chicken stew had roots in European cooking, but became a homecoming dinner favorite in American kitchens, especially in the South and Midwest. It was rich, comforting, and made the most of what was available. Chicken fricassee was the perfect example of resourceful cooking. In the days when whole chickens were bought instead of pre-cut parts, every bit was used. The meat was gently simmered in a velvety sauce made from broth, butter, and cream, creating a dish that felt indulgent without being expensive. Paired with dumplings or rice, it was a filling meal that stretched to feed a crowd. What made fricassee special was its balance between rustic and refined. Unlike fried or roasted chicken, this method kept the meat exceptionally tender, absorbing the sauce's deep flavors. Some families added carrots and peas, while others preferred a touch of sherry for extra depth. But no matter the variation, it was a dish meant to be ladled generously and served with warm, crusty bread. So why did it disappear? As boneless, skinless chicken breasts became the norm, slow-cooked dishes like this fell out of favor. Turkey and gravy, traditionally a centerpiece of Thanksgiving but often enjoyed beyond the holiday season, holds a special place in American culinary history. Its pairing with mashed turnips, though less common today, harkens back to a time when root vegetables were staples in kitchens for their affordability and long storage life. Turkey has been an American icon since colonial days. Benjamin Franklin famously praised the bird, calling it a much more respectable bird than the bald eagle. While roasting turkey might be associated with grand feasts, smaller versions, like turkey breasts, frequently appeared on mid-century dinner tables, making the meal more practical for everyday cooking. The star of the plate, next to the turkey, is the gravy. Made from the drippings left in the pan, it's rich, savory, and ties everything together. A good gravy, as some would say, can salvage even a dry turkey. Often overshadowed by mashed potatoes, turnips were a go-to side dish in earlier generations. Packed with nutrients and a slightly peppery flavor, they offered a lighter, unique alternative to spuds. Mashed with butter, cream, or even a touch of maple syrup, they brought earthy warmth to the plate. If turkey is the headliner, gravy is the conductor. And turnips? They're the backup singers you never knew you needed. A harmonious meal indeed. Duck à l'orange marries the deep, rich flavors of duck with the sharp zestiness of oranges, a culinary duo dating back to the Renaissance, though it gained popularity in Paris in the early 20th century. This classic dish features roasted duck with a skin crisped to perfection, paired with a sweet and tangy orange sauce made from fresh orange juice, sugar, vinegar, and sometimes Grand Marnier. To perfect duck à l'orange, meticulous attention is paid to rendering the fat from the duck skin, ensuring it crisps up beautifully to contrast with the juicy meat beneath. The sauce is usually prepared separately and reduced to a luscious syrup, then drizzled over the duck just before serving to preserve its bold, vibrant flavors. This dish masterfully balances the rich, natural fat of the duck with the bright, acidic notes of citrus, showcasing refined culinary techniques. Meatloaf is a dish as American as baseball and apple pie, though its origins stretch far beyond our shores. This hearty meal, often paired with creamy mashed potatoes and rich gravy, has been a dinner table staple for decades. Did you know its roots trace back to 5th century Europe? Early versions used minced meat and grains, evolving over centuries to become the comfort food we know today. By the mid-20th century, meatloaf hit its stride in the U.S. thanks to its affordability and adaptability. A pound of ground beef, a handful of breadcrumbs, an egg, and a few pantry staples could stretch to feed the whole family, an essential quality during the Great Depression and rationing in wartime. And those mashed potatoes were the perfect sidekick, whipped to perfection, seasoned just right, and often drenched in savory gravy. Together, they formed a duo so beloved that it might just have kept some dinner tables from declaring civil war over picky eating habits. Ketchup-topped meatloaf wasn't a universal choice. Regional variations abound, with some preferring a tangy barbecue glaze or even a brown sugar and mustard topping. Whatever the sauce, one thing's certain: meatloaf is proof that simple ingredients, when mixed with a little love, can create culinary magic. A perfectly roasted chicken was once the ultimate symbol of home cooking. Before rotisserie chickens lined supermarket shelves, families gathered around the table for a golden, crispy-skinned bird fresh from the oven. Coated in a flavorful crust of herbs and breadcrumbs, this dish turned an everyday staple into something worthy of a special occasion. Whole chickens were a budget-friendly choice, stretching across multiple meals. Unlike pre-cut pieces, a whole bird could be roasted, carved, and repurposed into soups or sandwiches, making it a practical investment. The breadcrumb and herb crust added texture and flavor, sealing in juices while creating a beautifully crisp exterior. Traditional blends featured rosemary, thyme, and parsley, but regional variations introduced garlic, lemon zest, or even a hint of paprika for extra depth. Pre-seasoned chicken breasts, boneless cuts, and store-bought rotisserie birds made the slow-roasted whole chicken tradition feel unnecessary. For many, the extra step of trussing, seasoning, and roasting no longer fit into busy weeknight schedules. Yet, for those who remember the aroma of herbs mingling with sizzling chicken fat in a warm oven, there's no substitute. Oysters Rockefeller consists of succulent oysters on the half-shell, topped with a rich buttery mixture of finely chopped herbs and breadcrumbs, then baked or broiled until golden. Originating in 1899 at Antoine's in New Orleans, one of America's historic restaurants, The dish's exact recipe remains a secret, but typically includes spinach, celery, and sometimes an anise-flavored liqueur, creating a luxurious topping. The oysters are gently poached in their shells to retain moisture, then crowned with this seasoned blend. After assembling, they are broiled until the topping bubbles and browns slightly, offering a delightful contrast in textures between the creamy, tender oyster and the crisp, flavorful topping. Oysters Rockefeller is not only a treat for the palate, but also a creative celebration of local ingredients, elevating the simple oyster to a decadent culinary experience. Bean bread is a unique type of bread made by mixing cooked beans into the dough. This dish was a creative way to stretch ingredients and make a filling, nutritious meal. The beans added protein and fiber, making the bread more substantial than your average loaf. Bean bread has a dense, hearty texture and a slightly nutty flavor from the beans. It's a bit of an acquired taste, but it was a practical solution during times when flour was scarce or expensive. In today's world of artisan breads and gluten-free options, bean bread hasn't exactly made a comeback. It's one of those foods that feels like a relic from another time, but it's still an interesting part of culinary history. If you're feeling adventurous, it might be worth trying your hand at baking a loaf just for the experience. Chili mac was what happened when leftovers became a second chance. It started with last night's chili, thick, spicy, and still holding its heat, stirred into freshly boiled elbow macaroni until it became something new entirely. The cheese, if there was any left in the fridge, went on top, melting just enough to hold everything together. The dish was quick, cheap, and full of life, a perfect fix for nights when time ran out and hunger could not wait. Kids loved it because it felt like comfort in a bowl. Moms loved it because it meant nothing was wasted. Every spoonful was hearty, familiar, and full of flavor that felt earned. It was thrift made joyful, proof that leftovers were not the end of the meal but the start of another. In homes where every dollar counted, Chili Mac stretched both food and gratitude farther than anyone thought possible. It was the weeknight hero of kitchen tables across America. Easy, satisfying, and always ready to save the day. The scent of chili mixed with noodles was as real as laughter, and every bite tasted like togetherness. It was what family looked like, messy, warm, and enough for everyone. So, cornmeal mush was the humble, comforting porridge made from, surprise, cornmeal. It became all the rage in the eastern and southeastern United States, and people in the Midwestern states ate it with maple syrup or molasses. In Eastern Europe, milk was poured over the meal once served and cooled down, rather than being boiled in it. Imagine a bowl of yellow, gluey goop that your grandma would call comfort food. Don't get me wrong, I love a good, hearty bowl of oatmeal, but cornmeal mush? That's a whole different level of bland. Apparently, people used to fry it up for breakfast. I guess it's a way to add some crunch to your mushy morning meal. This dish was a staple in many households during hard times because it was cheap, filling, and versatile. However, in today's world of avocado toast and acai bowls, cornmeal mush just doesn't stand a chance. Minted lamb with jelly brings together the rich, robust flavors of roasted lamb with the refreshing zest of mint jelly, making it a quintessential British dish often featured during spring and Easter celebrations. The long-standing tradition of pairing mint with lamb dates back to medieval England, where the herb's sprightly flavor was used to complement the lamb's slight gaminess. The preparation typically involves roasting a leg or shoulder of lamb, seasoned liberally with salt, pepper, and often aromatic garlic and rosemary, ensuring the meat is juicy and tender. The mint jelly, a blend of mint, sugar, and vinegar, offers a sweet and tangy counterpoint that enhances the meat's deep flavors. This dish exemplifies the classic British culinary technique of marrying robust meat with a vibrant, acidic condiment to create a balanced and satisfying dining experience. There was a time when vegetables weren't just steamed and forgotten on the side of the plate. They were the star of the meal. This dish took humble cauliflower and elevated it to something rich, comforting, and undeniably satisfying. Baked in a velvety cheese sauce and topped with golden breadcrumbs, creamy cauliflower gratin was a favorite at homecoming dinners, potlucks, and holiday tables alike. Cauliflower was once an affordable and widely available vegetable, appreciated for its versatility. It absorbed flavors beautifully, making it a natural pairing for creamy, cheesy sauces. The gratin method, borrowed from classic French cooking, ensured that every bite was infused with deep, savory richness. The top layer of breadcrumbs added just the right amount of crunch, creating a contrast that kept each forkful interesting. Some home cooks added a pinch of nutmeg or mustard to enhance the flavor, while others used a mix of cheeses for extra depth. So why did it fade from dinner tables? As frozen and canned vegetables became more common, fresh cauliflower lost its appeal. Many home cooks swapped slow-baked dishes for quicker, less labor-intensive sides, and gratins became associated with special occasions rather than everyday meals. With a name that evokes a French bistro and a flavor that feels like home-cooked comfort, chicken fricassee bridges the gap between elegance and nostalgia. This classic combines tender chicken with a creamy, flavorful sauce and an assortment of vegetables. The roots of chicken fricassee lie in French cuisine, with the term fricassee appearing as early as the 15th century. What sets it apart is the technique. Chicken pieces are first browned lightly, then simmered slowly in a sauce that often blends broth, cream, and a touch of white wine. Julia Child famously described it as halfway between a sauté and a stew, and if Julia said it, it must be true. Vegetables like carrots, celery, mushrooms, and pearl onions elevate the dish, adding texture and natural sweetness to complement the savory chicken. In many American households, this meal became a way to transform humble ingredients into something elegant. While its name might sound intimidating, chicken fricassee is surprisingly practical. It's one pot, easy to make, and the leftovers taste even better the next day, if they survive that long. Fricassee is the dish that makes you feel like you've been to Paris, even if your passport expired decades ago. There was a time when meatloaf was a household tradition. Made from simple, inexpensive ingredients, it was a staple of weeknight dinners and homecoming feasts alike. But what made this version special was the glaze, a perfectly balanced mix of ketchup and brown sugar that caramelized into a sticky, flavorful coating as it baked. Ground beef was one of the most affordable proteins, and by mixing it with breadcrumbs, eggs, and seasonings, home cooks could stretch a single pound to feed an entire family. Some variations included oats or crushed crackers, while others relied on Worcestershire sauce and mustard for added depth. But the secret weapon was always the glaze, a blend of sweet and tangy flavors that sealed in moisture and gave the loaf its signature glossy finish. So why did this dish start disappearing from dinner tables? As dietary trends shifted, meatloaf's reputation took a hit. Low-carb diets, leaner meat choices, and a move away from home-cooked comfort foods made it less popular. Pre-made frozen meatloaves also contributed, offering convenience at the cost of homemade flavor. Named in honor of the Italian opera singer Luisa Tetrazzini, chicken tetrazzini was reportedly whipped up by chef Ernest Arbogast at the Palace Hotel in San Francisco around the early 1900s. This dish, a testament to American culinary creativity, combines diced chicken and mushrooms with linguine or spaghetti in a sumptuous, creamy sauce that's often elevated with a splash of wine or sherry. Once assembled, it's liberally topped with grated Parmesan and baked until a golden crust forms on top. The addition of sherry or wine doesn't only boost the flavor, it also cuts through the cream's richness with its acidity. Typically, this dish is finished with a sprinkle of parsley or paprika to boost its visual appeal and add layers of subtle flavor. Despite its straightforward ingredients, chicken tetrazzini welcomes variations, such as almonds or pimentos, enhancing both its taste and texture. It's not just a delicious meal, but also a smart way to repurpose leftover chicken or turkey. Speaking of strange meals, wait till you hear about hog maw. Now, this is a dish that's sure to impress your dinner guests. It's basically a pig's stomach stuffed with, well, who knows? Probably whatever was lying around. When you think of luxurious foods, a pig's stomach is probably the last thing that comes to mind. But back when wallets were tight, people had to make do with whatever they could find. It was found in American, soul food, Chinese, Mexican, Portuguese, Italian, and Vietnamese dishes. Hog maw was especially popular in Pennsylvania Dutch country, where nothing went to waste. Now, hog maw might sound a little fear factor-ish, but it was actually a way to stretch ingredients and make a filling meal for the whole family. It's like the ultimate meatloaf, if meatloaf came with an organ-based casing. These days, the idea of eating a pig's stomach might turn some people off, but back in the day, it was just another way to enjoy a meal. Beef and tater tot bake was what happened when practicality met pride. It started with ground beef browned in a skillet, mixed with canned vegetables, cream soup, and a pinch of seasoning that every mother knew by heart. Then came the tater tots, lined neatly across the top like soldiers waiting for duty, ready to turn crisp and golden in the oven. The smell that followed was the smell of relief, warm, savory, and steady. The bubbling soup beneath made a soft stew while the tots stayed crunchy, giving each bite a bit of both comfort and contrast. It was a weeknight win that felt like victory, a way to make something hearty without much time or money. When the casserole dish hit the table, conversation started again. The sound of forks clinking was a soundtrack to everyday life, simple, predictable, and full. It proved that love did not need fancy ingredients. It just needed to show up hot. Sole meunière is an exemplary dish that highlights the inherent flavors of its primary ingredient through a simple yet precise preparation method. This dish involves a sole fillet, lightly dusted with flour, then pan-fried in butter to a perfect golden brown. After cooking, the fillet is enhanced with a sauce of the pan's browned butter, fresh lemon juice, and chopped parsley, drizzled over the fish to amplify its delicate, sweet taste. The freshness and quality of the sole are crucial. Ideally, the fish is prepared soon after being caught, underscoring the importance of ingredient freshness in French culinary arts. The preparation focuses on preserving the fish's natural flavors, complemented subtly by the nutty browned butter and the bright lemon juice. Choosing sole, a flat fish valued for its fine texture and mild flavor, is vital as it cooks quickly and uniformly, making sole meunière a revered dish for its elegant simplicity. Traditional corn pudding was left behind, but for those who remember its warm, velvety bite, it's a dish worth bringing back. For families stretching their grocery budget, few meals delivered as much flavor and comfort as these unusual-looking meatballs. A product of the Great Depression and wartime rationing, porcupine meatballs were a creative way to make ground beef go further. Mixing rice into the meat wasn't just for texture. It bulked up the meal, making a pound of beef feed more mouths. Rice was an affordable pantry staple, and when the meatballs simmered in a tangy tomato sauce, the grains softened and expanded, giving them their signature spiky appearance. Despite the name, no porcupines were harmed in the making of this dish. Just a bit of kitchen ingenuity at work. Some recipes used canned tomato soup for a mild, creamy sauce, while others relied on crushed tomatoes and Worcestershire sauce for a sharper kick. Either way, the slow cooking process allowed the flavors to meld into a hearty, stick-to-your-ribs meal. For decades, this dish was a go-to for busy home cooks. It was easy, required minimal ingredients, and could be made in one pot, ideal for feeding a growing family. But as convenience foods and pre-made meatballs filled grocery store freezers, the homemade version started to disappear. Peach chicken became popular in the 1970s, aligning with an American trend of integrating fruit into savory dishes. This recipe combines the natural sweetness of peaches with the savory depth of chicken, creating a delightful contrast. Browned chicken pieces are simmered with fresh or canned peaches, with ginger and cinnamon adding a layer of spice that complements the sweetness. Additional peach preserves or syrup can be added to enrich the sauce, deepening the dish's flavor profile. A splash of bourbon or brandy is sometimes included, lending a smoky nuance. The sauce is typically thickened with a cornstarch slurry, producing a glossy finish that adheres beautifully to the chicken. This dish illustrates the versatility of chicken as a canvas for flavor, adeptly marrying the sweet with the savory in a uniquely American culinary experiment. Potted huff is a dish made from the meat of the shin of a cow or pig, cooked and pressed into a pot with its own jelly-like juices. It's similar to head cheese but focuses on a specific part of the animal. This dish was often seasoned and served cold, sliced up with bread or pickles. Back in the day, potted hoof was a way to make use of tougher cuts of meat that needed slow cooking to become tender. It was a popular dish among working-class families in the UK and the US, providing a hearty, protein-rich meal. Nowadays, potted hoof has largely disappeared from the culinary scene, replaced by more refined meat products. It's a dish that hasn't stood the test of time, but it still offers a glimpse into the resourceful cooking of past generations. Grits and sausage supper was Southern practicality at its finest. Leftover breakfast sausage met creamy grits for a meal that was fast, filling, and deeply satisfying. The grits simmered smooth while the sausage sizzled brown, the two combining into something that felt both rustic and rich. Moms made it when dinner needed to happen quickly, and nobody could bear another sandwich. A pat of butter and a sprinkle of pepper made it perfect, simple as it was. It was comfort that cost almost nothing, spooned into bowls, served hot, and eaten without hurry. The smell of sausage hung in the air, earthy and familiar, reminding everyone that food did not need to be fancy to feel good. It was the kind of meal that filled bellies and quieted rooms. Every bite felt like home, thick with warmth and gratitude. The sound of spoons scraping bowls was steady and soft, a sign that everyone was content. It was food that soothed the spirit, built from the rhythm of routine and the wisdom of making do. Even after long days, it brought a sense of calm to the table, a quiet celebration of enough. Nothing about it was extravagant, yet it carried the dignity of care, proof that love could still be found in the humblest suppers. No dish says Sunday dinner like a pot roast simmering away, filling the house with the unmistakable aroma of comfort. Pot roast was an event, the centerpiece of countless family gatherings. Originating in France, pot au feu inspired what we now call pot roast, combining tougher cuts of beef with slow cooking to create something tender and flavorful. In America, the pot roast became a household favorite thanks to its practicality. Chuck roast, brisket, or round, these cuts weren't fancy, but with the magic of a Dutch oven or slow cooker, they transformed into melt-in-your-mouth perfection. Carrots, potatoes, and onions balanced the rich beef with earthy sweetness and hearty texture. The beauty of pot roast is its patience. It doesn't demand attention, just time. It's a dish that rewards you for slowing down, a rarity in today's grab-and-go world. As one home cook joked, it's the only dish that cooks itself while you're watching Sunday football. And we shall not forget the gravy, a pot roast's crowning glory. Thickened with pan drippings, it's the glue that holds this masterpiece together. If love had a flavor, pot roast might just be it. Sorrel soup is made from the sorrel plant, known for its tart, lemony flavor. This leafy green was often used in soups and stews, providing a bright, tangy taste that could liven up simple ingredients. Sorrel soup was especially popular in Eastern European and Middle Eastern cuisines, where it was often served with a dollop of cream or a boiled egg. Sorrel itself is a bit of a forgotten green these days, overshadowed by kale, spinach, and other more common leafy vegetables. Sorrel soup hasn't exactly made a splash in the modern culinary scene, but it's still a dish that holds a special place in the hearts of those who grew up with it. It's a refreshing, light soup that's perfect for a spring or summer meal, but it's not something you'll find on many restaurant menus today. Canned salmon patties were the ocean's answer to tight budgets. The can opener clicked, the fish flaked apart, and with an egg, a bit of onion, and crushed crackers, dinner took shape. Each patty hit the hot skillet with a sizzle, turning golden and crisp at the edges. The smell was rich and savory, the kind of aroma that promised something satisfying even before the first bite. Served with mashed potatoes and peas, it made a plate that looked like comfort itself. The outside was crunchy, the inside soft and tender, holding just enough salt to remind you of the sea. It was the kind of meal that didn't need explaining. Everyone just knew it would be good. Moms loved how fast it came together, how far one can could go. The leftovers, if there were any, made fine sandwiches the next day. It was proof that thrift could taste elegant when cooked with care. Lamb shanks epitomize the rich flavors and tender textures celebrated in Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cuisines. Prized for their gelatin-rich connective tissue, Lamb shanks transform through slow cooking into melt-in-your-mouth tenderness. The preparation starts with searing the shanks to a golden brown, locking in flavors through caramelization, then braising them slowly in a mix of wine, stock, and aromatics like onions, carrots, and celery, enhanced with herbs such as rosemary and thyme. This method not only tenderizes the meat, but also infuses it with a robust blend of flavors. Typically, the dish is finished with a sprinkle of gremolata, adding a fresh burst of lemon, garlic, and parsley that cuts through the richness. The braised liquid serves as a deeply flavored sauce, reduced to intensify its taste, complementing the richness of the lamb with a perfect balance of flavors. Few meals capture the essence of Southern cooking like fried chicken with cornbread and collard greens. Each component has a rich history that has shaped American culinary traditions, and together they create a trifecta of flavor, texture, and nostalgia. Fried chicken, with its golden, crispy crust and tender interior, dates back centuries. European immigrants brought the concept of frying poultry, but it was African American cooks in the South who perfected the technique, seasoning the chicken and frying it in cast-iron skillets. By the mid-20th century, it was a Sunday staple, served to mark special occasions or simply as a reward for the week's hard work. Cornbread, meanwhile, is a true American original, rooted in Native American cooking. Made with cornmeal, it became a Southern classic for its simplicity and versatility. Whether sweetened with a touch of honey or served savory, it's the ideal partner for soaking up juices from the chicken or a splash of hot sauce. And then there are the collard greens, slow-cooked with a bit of pork or bacon fat for a smoky, hearty flavor. Rich in vitamins, they're proof that comfort food can also be nutritious. Some of the best dishes come from necessity, and few ingredients are as dependable as potatoes. For generations, scalloped potatoes were a staple at homecoming dinners, potlucks, and Sunday feasts. Thinly sliced and baked in a rich, velvety sauce, they were a testament to the idea that simple ingredients, when treated right, could feel downright luxurious. Potatoes were the backbone of many American kitchens. They were cheap, easy to store, and could feed an entire family without much effort. The addition of a creamy sauce, made from milk, butter, and a touch of garlic, elevated this humble dish into something special. Some versions kept it simple, while others included layers of cheese, turning it into a gooey, golden masterpiece. Either way, it was a comforting, belly-filling side that paired well with just about any main course. The cooking process required patience. Proper scalloped potatoes weren't rushed. Each layer had to absorb the sauce, and the top needed time to develop that perfect golden crust. But as boxed potato mixes and instant gratins took over, homemade scalloped potatoes started to fade from dinner tables. Swiss steak, a dish that's neither Swiss nor a steak, but somehow it has become a classic on American dinner tables. The name Swiss refers to the technique of Swissing, a process of tenderizing tougher cuts of beef like round steak by pounding or rolling it out. The result is a melt-in-your-mouth meal that feels far fancier than its humble beginnings. This dish gained popularity in mid-century America, when home cooks needed to stretch their budgets. By slow-cooking tenderized beef in a rich tomato-based sauce, the flavors could develop while turning inexpensive cuts into something extraordinary. Onions were essential, adding sweetness and depth to the tangy tomatoes. The result was a savory, satisfying dish perfect for ladling over mashed potatoes, rice, or even buttered noodles. Tomatoes, a key player in Swiss steak, were a practical choice. Canned tomatoes, first popularized in the early 1900s, made this dish accessible year-round. Who can resist the sight of those onions caramelizing in the skillet before being smothered in sauce? One could say Swiss steak is the Cinderella story of the food world. It starts tough, a little rough around the edges, but with a little care and time, it transforms into something utterly irresistible. Proof that sometimes slow and steady wins the race. Pot liquor is the savory, nutrient-rich liquid left over after boiling greens like collards, kale, or mustard greens. This flavorful broth was often sopped up with cornbread or drank straight from the bowl. It's packed with vitamins and minerals, making it a staple in many Southern households. In a world obsessed with bone broth and kale smoothies, you'd think pot liquor would be all the rage. But for some reason, it hasn't quite made the leap to the mainstream. Maybe it's the name, or maybe it's just too old-fashioned for today's palate. Either way, pot liquor is a delicious, nutritious throwback to a time when people didn't let anything go to waste. It's a dish that deserves a comeback, even if just for its health benefits. Beef and cabbage skillet supper was dinner that smelled like strength. Ground beef browned in a cast-iron skillet, joined by chopped cabbage, diced onion, and a pinch of pepper. Everything sizzled together until the cabbage softened and the beef turned rich and flavorful. The steam fogged the kitchen window, the air thick with the scent of home. It was hearty but light, a full meal in one pan, made for nights when everyone was too tired for fuss. The cabbage soaked up all the juices, creating something between a stew and a stir-fry long before stir-fry was ever trendy. A few splashes of vinegar gave it brightness. A spoon of sugar softened the bite. It was both humble and bold, the perfect balance of thrift and taste. Every bite carried the memory of work boots by the door and quiet gratitude at the table. It was not just dinner. It was survival turned satisfying. Tripe is the edible stomach lining of cows, and it's one of those ingredients that makes you go, "Really?" But in many cultures, tripe was a beloved dish, often cooked in soups and stews. Here's the thing. These poverty foods weren't just about using the cheapest ingredients available. They were about resourcefulness and respecting the entire animal. People found ways to use every part, from the meat to the organs and even the stomach lining, turning what others might discard into nourishing meals. Now, as for tripe, it has a unique texture that's chewy but tender, and it soaks up flavors beautifully. Back in the day, it was a cheap way to add protein to a meal, especially when times were tough. It's the kind of dish that takes some getting used to, both in terms of taste and texture. Today, tripe is more likely to be found in ethnic cuisine than on the average American dinner table. It's one of those foods that hasn't quite stood the test of time, but it still has a loyal following among those who appreciate its unique qualities. Aspic glazed meatloaf is an example of mid-20th century American cuisine that combines traditional meatloaf with a gelatinous aspic topping. This dish reflects a period when aspic, a savory jelly made from clarified meat broths and gelatin, was popular in the culinary world for its ability to preserve and enhance the presentation of dishes. The meatloaf itself is typically prepared with ground meat, often a mix of beef, pork, and veal, seasoned with onions, garlic, breadcrumbs, and eggs to bind the mixture. After baking, the meatloaf is cooled and then glazed with a clear aspic made from beef or chicken stock that has been reduced and mixed with gelatin until set. This glaze not only adds a glossy, appetizing finish, but also introduces a subtle, savory flavor that complements the rich meatloaf. The aspic also helps to keep the meatloaf moist and flavorful by sealing in the juices. Slow cooking was once a necessity, not a luxury. Before pressure cookers and pre-packaged meals, tougher cuts of beef were transformed through hours of gentle simmering, unlocking deep, rich flavors. This smoky chipotle beef ragu was one such dish, a meal that took time but rewarded patience with melt-in-your-mouth tenderness. Chipotle peppers, known for their earthy heat, were a staple in traditional Mexican and Southwestern cooking, but by the mid-20th century, their smoky kick found its way into American kitchens. Paired with tomatoes, garlic, and slow-braised beef, this dish delivered a bold, layered flavor that stood apart from ordinary pot roasts. Served over creamy polenta or even buttered noodles, it was both comforting and deeply satisfying. Despite its rich taste, this meal was surprisingly budget-friendly. Beef chuck or brisket, once some of the most affordable cuts, became tender and flavorful when cooked low and slow. The sauce was built from pantry staples, making it an easy, accessible choice for home cooks. But over time, as quick weeknight meals took priority and polenta lost ground to pasta and rice, this dish faded from dinner tables. Today, chipotle has seen a resurgence in trendy restaurants, but this home-style beef ragu remains a forgotten classic. Spaghetti with meatballs and garlic bread is an iconic meal that combines Italian tradition with American innovation. While pasta with tomato sauce has roots deep in Italian cuisine, The pairing of spaghetti with meatballs became popular in the United States in the early 20th century, thanks to Italian immigrants looking to recreate familiar dishes in a new land. The meatball itself is believed to have evolved from a mix of ground meats, herbs, and breadcrumbs, often made from leftovers. In Italy, smaller meatballs were served as part of a larger meal, but when Italian-American cooks began to serve them as a standalone dish, they became the hearty centerpiece of spaghetti dinners. The combination of savory meatballs, tomato sauce, and long strands of spaghetti soon became synonymous with comfort and family meals. No spaghetti dinner would be complete without garlic bread. While garlic bread wasn't traditionally Italian, it quickly became a staple in American Italian cuisine. The golden, crispy texture of the bread, combined with the rich garlic butter, complements the pasta perfectly. Cornish game hen, a petite and elegant poultry choice, typically weighs no more than 2 pounds and is ideal for serving as an individual portion, making it perfect for an upscale dinner. These hens are usually roasted whole, seasoned lightly with herbs like thyme and sage, and basted in butter to achieve a crispy, golden skin while keeping the meat juicy and tender. The cavity may be stuffed with a flavorful blend of breadcrumbs, chopped vegetables, and herbs, enriching the meat during cooking. The cooking process often involves high-temperature roasting to crisp the skin, followed by a resting period before serving to ensure the meat remains moist. Serving Cornish game hens on a bed of wild rice or alongside roasted vegetables allows their delicate flavors to shine, making them a favored choice for intimate dining and special occasions due to their ideal portion size and visually appealing presentation. Next up, we have cicadas. Yes, you heard that right. Cicadas. These insects were eaten during times of food scarcity, offering a protein-rich snack when other food sources were limited. Cicadas are actually quite nutritious, with a nutty flavor that's often compared to almonds or shrimp. Eating insects might sound strange to some, but it's a common practice in many cultures around the world. Cicadas, in particular, were a seasonal delicacy in certain regions, collected and cooked in various ways. In modern times, the idea of eating bugs hasn't quite caught on in the mainstream Western diet, although there's a growing interest in edible insects as a sustainable protein source. Cicadas may not have stood the test of time as a popular food, but they remain a fascinating part of culinary history. Chicken spaghetti was the kind of meal that made everyone pause and smile when the oven door opened. It was creamy, cheesy, and colorful, made with shredded chicken, chopped bell peppers, and a can or two of condensed soup that stretched flavor farther than anyone expected. The spaghetti went in soft, tangled in sauce until it turned into a rich casserole that could feed a crowd with ease. The cheese bubbled on top, golden and stringy, the sort that clung to every forkful. It was the definition of a working mother's magic, quick, practical, and somehow perfect every time. Kids loved it because it was warm and familiar. Adults loved it because it made leftovers worth looking forward to. It was not fancy food, but it was family food, built to comfort after long days and long weeks. It said, "You are home now." Every bite was a reminder that love could be creamy and baked, tucked into the shape of a casserole. The recipe lived in every small-town kitchen, written on note cards smudged with sauce and fingerprints. It could feed 6 or 10 or more, depending on what needed stretching. Some added mushrooms, others a handful of peas, and every family claimed their way was best. But no matter the version, the smell of bubbling cheese and pepper always meant one thing. The day was done and dinner was taken care of. Hamburger hash is the unsung hero of the frugal kitchen. Born out of necessity and ingenuity, this dish has been rescuing leftovers and stretching budgets for decades. The concept is simple: ground beef, diced potatoes, and onions cooked together in a skillet. But its simplicity is exactly what makes it timeless. The origins of hash can be traced to the 17th century, when the term came from the French word hacher, meaning to chop. In America, it evolved into a practical way to repurpose leftover meats. By the 20th century, hamburger hash became a staple in many households, particularly during tough economic times, when every ingredient had to count. Potatoes were the perfect partner, cheap, filling, and versatile. Onions, meanwhile, brought a touch of sweetness to balance the savory beef. Some cooks added a sprinkle of paprika or a dash of Worcestershire sauce for an extra punch of flavor. While it may not have the glamour of a Sunday roast, hamburger hash had one major advantage. It came together fast, a blessing on busy weeknights. Hamburger hash proves that even leftovers can shine, especially if you fry them just right. It's a humble dish with a big heart, reminding us that great meals don't need complicated recipes. There was a time when Sunday dinner wasn't complete without a plate of slow-cooked, gravy-drenched pork chops. Smothered in rich, savory onion gravy and served alongside a heaping portion of mashed potatoes, this dish was a cornerstone of Southern home cooking. It was an experience, one that filled the kitchen with the unmistakable aroma of comfort. Pork was an affordable alternative to beef, making it a practical choice for families looking to stretch their grocery budget. Bone-in chops were particularly popular, as they were both flavorful and inexpensive. The slow cooking process allowed even the toughest cuts to become fork tender, absorbing the deep, savory notes of the seasoned gravy. Some cooks swore by a cast-iron skillet, while others let the dish simmer in a slow cooker for hours, ensuring the pork melted in your mouth. But as convenience foods and boneless, skinless meats took over the supermarket, this dish began to disappear. Quick-fix dinners replaced slow-simmered meals, and thick homemade gravies gave way to powdered mixes and canned alternatives. Today, smothered pork chops are a rare sight at the dinner table, but for those who remember the first bite of a perfectly tender chop covered in rich, peppery gravy, it's a dish worth revisiting. Crown roast of lamb is an exquisite dish often reserved for special occasions and holiday feasts. This majestic preparation involves arranging racks of lamb into a circular shape that resembles a crown, with ribs pointing skyward. It's seasoned with a mix of rosemary, garlic, and thyme, both in the marinade and as a rub applied before roasting. To enhance its flavor and retain moisture, the crown center is typically filled with a stuffing composed of breadcrumbs, minced garlic, herbs, and occasionally dried fruits like apricots or cranberries. The lamb is roasted until it achieves a tender texture and a beautifully browned exterior. Precision in tying the racks together ensures the roast cooks evenly. To perfect its presentation, chefs often cover the tips of the ribs with foil during roasting to prevent charring. This dish not only dazzles as a culinary delight, but also stands as a festive centerpiece, symbolizing celebration and feasting. Scrapple was the typical everything but the oink dish. This Pennsylvania Dutch classic was made from pork scraps. Yes, that includes everything from the snout to the tail, combined with cornmeal and flour, then formed into a loaf. It is also known by the Pennsylvania Dutch name panhas. Scrapples and panhas were commonly considered ethnic foods of the Pennsylvania Dutch, including the Mennonites and Amish. Scraps of meat left over from butchering not otherwise used or sold were made into scrapples to avoid waste. It's like your grandma's meatloaf with a whole lot more mystery meat. Scrapple had a love it or hate it reputation. For some, it was a comfort food that reminded them of home. For others, it was a mysterious meat block they'd rather avoid. It's definitely an acquired taste, one that has not quite made it to mainstream breakfast menus. And don't even get me started on the texture. I'll leave a little to your imagination. Pork chops with scalloped potatoes was a duo so perfectly matched, it's as if they were destined to share the same plate. This meal became a dinnertime favorite for its balance of simplicity and satisfaction. Tender, pan-seared pork chops alongside creamy, cheesy potatoes? It's no wonder it earned its spot in the hearts and stomachs of families everywhere. The secret to scalloped potatoes lies in their layers. Thinly sliced potatoes are smothered in a rich, velvety sauce made from milk or cream, often with a touch of cheese, and baked until golden and bubbling. The dish likely evolved from French gratin dauphinois, but American cooks put their own spin on it by using cheese more liberally. Pork chops, on the other hand, have always been a practical choice for home cooks. Affordable and quick to prepare, they pair perfectly with the creamy potatoes, creating a meal that's hearty yet approachable. To many, the crispy edges of the potatoes and the seared crust on the pork chops were the best part. This meal is like a warm hug in casserole form. The only downside is that it's impossible to stop at just one serving. And really, who would want to? Bright, tangy, and effortlessly elegant lemon chicken piccata was once a dinner table favorite. With its delicate balance of citrus, butter, and briny capers, this dish turned simple ingredients into something refined. Italian-American families popularized it in mid-century kitchens, and by the 1960s, it had become a go-to recipe for home cooks looking to add a touch of sophistication to a weeknight meal. Chicken was an economical protein, but before boneless, skinless cuts were widely available, whole birds had to be broken down by hand. Piccata was traditionally made with thinly pounded chicken breasts, quickly dredged in flour and sautéed until golden. The sauce was the star, fresh lemon juice and capers combined with a silky butter reduction to create a dish that was light yet deeply flavorful. It was often served with pasta or rice, making it both practical and satisfying. So why did this dish vanish from home kitchens? Over time, complex flavors gave way to simpler, more standardized meals. The rise of processed sauces and pre-made chicken dishes made from scratch piccata seemed like more effort than it was worth. Coq au vin stands out as a rich, soul-warming dish that is achieved through a slow cooking process that melds the flavors of chicken and wine thoroughly. Traditionally used to soften tough roosters, modern recipes often utilize chicken, marinated, and then braised in wine, typically red, along with mushrooms, onions, garlic, and a bouquet garni. Initially, the chicken is seared until golden, then simmered slowly with lardons, which infuse a smoky depth. This technique showcases French braising skills, starting with a high sear followed by a gentle, prolonged cooking in a covered pot, allowing the intricate flavors to blend and enhance the meat. The selection of wine is pivotal, forming a flavorful sauce base that deeply seasons the chicken, transforming it into a hearty, deeply satisfying stew that exemplifies rustic yet refined French cooking. Okay, if you have a light stomach, this next one's not for you. Chicken feet. You heard that right? Now, we're getting into some real survival food territory. Chicken feet might sound like a strange choice for a meal, but in many cultures, they're considered a delicacy. These little feet are often used to make rich, flavorful broths and soups. The high collagen content gives the broth a silky texture that's perfect for sipping on a cold day. However, chicken feet aren't exactly the most popular menu item in the West, or at least anymore. They were big back when people had to eat whatever they could find, like the tough days of the Great Depression. But in today's modern world, chicken feet are a big no thank you. They're a bit bony and can be a challenge to eat, which might be why they haven't caught on like, say, chicken wings. But for those in the know, they're a tasty, nutrient-rich part of the chicken that's worth trying at least once. Just don't expect to see them in your local fast food chain anytime soon. Beef and barley soup was a working woman's patience in a pot. It started early, with tough cuts of beef browned slow, onions and carrots sizzling until they softened, and barley sprinkled in to thicken everything with heartiness. The smell drifted through the house all afternoon, a sign that something was waiting at the end of the day. It was the kind of meal that didn't need tending, just trust. The kind that simmered quietly while laundry dried and homework got done. By dinner, the broth was deep and rich, the barley plump, the beef tender enough to fall apart with a spoon. It was nutrition dressed as nostalgia, proof that time could turn cheap cuts into something almost luxurious. Moms made it not for praise, but for peace, to warm everyone from the inside out. It was the kind of soup that could cure almost anything a long day brought. The pot itself seemed to hum with warmth, each bubble carrying the smell of comfort. Bread might have been stale, but dipped in that broth, it tasted new again. Every bowl came with seconds, and every refill came with thanks. This was love slow-cooked, ladled gently, and served with pride, the quiet kind that asked for nothing back. Cheesy broccoli and rice casserole is a dish that may just be the ultimate comfort food. It's the kind of meal that fills the house with an irresistible aroma, combining the earthiness of broccoli, the warmth of rice, and the creamy richness of cheese. Its popularity skyrocketed in the 1960s, when casseroles became a go-to for busy families looking for easy, satisfying meals. The origin of this casserole can be traced back to the post-war era when convenience foods, like canned soups and processed cheeses, took center stage. The combination of broccoli and rice, often bound together with a can of creamy mushroom soup, was an affordable and filling way to stretch ingredients. Over time, home cooks started adding their own twists, incorporating cheddar cheese, garlic, and even a crunchy breadcrumb topping for texture. While it's easy to dismiss cheesy broccoli and rice casserole as just another side dish, it's also the type of meal that can easily steal the spotlight at dinner. It's a versatile dish, whether served alongside a roast chicken or as the main event for a meatless dinner. Cheesy broccoli and rice casserole is the ultimate kitchen hack. Tastes gourmet, takes no time, and leaves everyone smiling. It's the kind of dish that proves simplicity can be deliciously satisfying. Before plant-based eating became trendy, hearty vegetarian dishes like this one were a practical necessity. Creamy wild rice and mushroom casserole was a staple in Midwestern and Northern kitchens, especially during the colder months. Packed with earthy flavors and a rich, velvety texture, it was a comforting dish that felt just as satisfying as any meat-based meal. Wild rice, despite its name, isn't actually rice. It's a highly nutritious aquatic grain native to North America. Indigenous tribes harvested it for centuries, and by the mid-20th century, it had found its way into everyday cooking. Though slightly more expensive than white rice, its nutty flavor and chewy texture made it worth the price. Combined with mushrooms, one of the most affordable and widely available vegetables, this dish was both economical and deeply flavorful. A creamy sauce, often made with milk, butter, and a touch of sherry, tied everything together, creating a casserole that was rich yet wholesome. As convenience foods surged in popularity, canned cream of anything soup replaced homemade sauces, and wild rice was increasingly swapped for cheaper, quicker-cooking grains. Over time, this once-loved casserole became a relic of an era when scratch cooking was the norm. Galantine of chicken is a testament to the elaborate artistry of classical French cuisine, popularized in the 17th century. It involves a meticulous process where a whole chicken is deboned and stuffed with a seasoned mix of ground meat, fats, and spices, including luxurious touches like pistachios and truffles. The chicken is then encased back within its skin, poached in a flavorful stock and set to cool, often in the gelatin-rich cooking liquid, to form a jelly. Decorated with artistic slices of vegetables, herbs, or edible flowers and coated in a glistening aspic, galantine is served cold, making it a striking centerpiece for buffets and banquets. This dish not only showcases the culinary craftsmanship of detailed butchery and seasoning, but also the aesthetic presentation. Sausage and cabbage skillet was the one-pan wonder that turned thrift into art. A single link of sausage, sliced thin, met a pile of cabbage that wilted down into tenderness, flavored by onions and a touch of pepper. The smell was sharp, smoky, and comforting all at once. It cooked fast but tasted slow, the kind of dish that tasted better than it had any right to. Moms liked it because it stretched what little meat they had into a meal that could fill everyone's plate. The cabbage soaked up all the flavor, and the sausage gave it heart. It was the definition of economy. No waste, no rush, just a skillet and a bit of love. Steam filled the kitchen windows, and the air felt alive. This dish proved that patience and seasoning could make miracles from scraps. Every bite carried pride, and every pan told a story of strength. Clabber is soured milk that was often used in baking or eaten as a spread with sugar or fruit. Before the days of refrigeration, clabber was a common way to use up milk that had started to sour. The natural bacteria in the milk would ferment it, creating a thick, yogurt-like consistency. Clabber might sound a bit strange to modern ears, but it was a staple in many households. It's similar to yogurt or buttermilk, both of which are still popular today. However, clabber itself has fallen out of favor, likely due to its strong, tangy flavor and the modern preference for fresher dairy products. It's a reminder of a time when people made use of every bit of food they had. Hardtack, also known as ship's biscuit, is a simple, hard biscuit made from flour and water. It was a staple for sailors, soldiers, and pioneers because it had a long shelf life and was easy to transport. The downside? It was so hard that it could break your teeth if you weren't careful. While macaroni and cheese is often considered the ultimate comfort food, adding stewed tomatoes turns it into something unique, balancing the creamy, cheesy richness with a hint of tangy sweetness. Macaroni and cheese dates back to the early 1700s, with recipes appearing in both European and American cookbooks. The combination of pasta and cheese was revolutionary, and its popularity soared when processed cheese became widely available in the 20th century. By the 1950s, boxed versions made it easier than ever to bring the dish to the table. As for stewed tomatoes, they've been a pantry staple in many households, especially during the harvest season. Stewing tomatoes was a way to preserve the bounty of summer for colder months. When paired with macaroni and cheese, the acidic tomatoes cut through the richness of the cheese, providing a satisfying contrast. While it might seem like a basic dish, macaroni and cheese with stewed tomatoes is the kind of meal that hits the spot every time. Side dishes were once as thoughtfully prepared as the main course, and few were as simple yet elegant as a well-roasted carrot medley. Coated in honey, butter, and a hint of cinnamon, this dish was a staple at homecoming dinners, adding a touch of natural sweetness to balance out heavier meats and casseroles. Carrots were a practical choice for home cooks. They were cheap, easy to store, and available year-round, making them a kitchen essential. Roasting them brought out their natural sugars, and when paired with honey and warm spices, they became more than just a side dish. They were a highlight. Some versions used maple syrup instead, while others incorporated fresh herbs for a more savory twist. No matter the variation, the result was always a vibrant, glossy medley of tender carrots with a flavor profile that felt both nostalgic and indulgent. As processed vegetable sides and microwave steamed bags took over grocery store shelves, many home cooks stopped roasting vegetables altogether. Instead of taking the time to caramelize their natural flavors, people opted for pre-cut and pre-cooked options. Tornados Rossini is an indulgent reflection of haute cuisine, named after the gourmet aficionado and renowned composer Gioacchino Rossini. Crafted by the legendary chef Auguste Escoffier in Paris, this dish features a medallion of beef tenderloin, cooked in butter and crowned with a slice of sumptuous foie gras. Resting on a crouton that soaks up the juices, the Tornados is lavished with a rich Madeira demi-glace that's infused with truffles and finished with butter, then garnished with fresh truffle slices. The preparation of this dish demands precision. The beef tenderloin seared to perfection, the foie gras just melting, and the sauce richly coating each component. Tornados Rossini not only showcases the luxury of its ingredients, but also the skill in combining them to deliver a dish that is as opulent in taste as it is in history. Another item on this list is head cheese. Don't let the name fool you. There's no cheese in head cheese. Instead, it's a terrine or meat jelly made from the flesh of a pig or calf's head. Sounds appetizing, right? Variations of head cheese exist throughout Europe and elsewhere, with differences in preparation and ingredients. A version pickled with vinegar is known as souse. Head cheese was a way to use every part of the animal, especially during times when food was scarce. It's a dish that's rich in flavor and history, but not exactly a crowd pleaser in modern times. While you might still find it in some specialty delis, it's not the kind of thing you'd bring to a potluck without a disclaimer. Minute steak with onions was speed in a skillet, the perfect answer to evenings that ran too long. Thin cuts of beef sizzled fast in butter, joined by sliced onions that caramelized into sweetness almost before the table was set. A side of instant potatoes or buttered noodles finished the job, turning a quick fry into a meal worth sitting down for. You could hear the hiss of the pan, smell the onion melting into the meat, and no dinner was just minutes away. It was not glamorous, but it was honest. Food that filled a plate and a need. Working moms leaned on it because it worked every time. The pan drippings became a kind of gravy, wiped up with bread or potatoes. No one complained. No one left hungry. It was the taste of the 1970s kitchen, quick, fragrant, and made with quiet endurance. Hoppin' John is a southern classic made with black-eyed peas, rice, and pork, often flavored with onions, garlic, and spices. This dish was traditionally eaten on New Year's Day for good luck and prosperity, with the peas representing coins and the greens often served alongside representing dollars. Some recipes use ham hock, fatback, country sausage, or smoked turkey parts instead of bacon. A few use green peppers or vinegar and spices. Hoppin' John was a hearty, comforting dish that's perfect for feeding a crowd on a budget. It was a one-pot wonder that brings together simple ingredients in a delicious way. However, despite its tasty credentials, Hoppin' John hasn't quite made it to the top of the culinary charts. It's a dish steeped in tradition, but not one that has a big presence in today's trendy food scene. That said, it's still a beloved dish in the South and a tasty way to start the new year. Tamale pie is an American dish that brings together the heartiness of ground beef, the comfort of a cornmeal topping, and a blend of savory seasonings that make it a family favorite. While the name might suggest a traditional tamale, tamale pie is actually a casserole that layers these ingredients for a meal that's both satisfying and easy to make. The dish likely has its roots in the Southwest, where tamales have been a staple in Mexican cuisine for centuries. However, tamale pie emerged in the United States in the mid-20th century as a more accessible version, taking the flavors of tamales and turning them into a bake. Ground beef is browned with onions, garlic, and chili powder, then topped with a cornmeal batter and baked until golden. The result is a savory pie with a cornmeal crust that mimics the texture of a tamale. Tamale pie quickly became a favorite for home cooks thanks to its simplicity and versatility. It could be customized with ingredients like cheese, olives, or even jalapenos to suit personal tastes. Some families served it with a side of cornbread or a dollop of sour cream for extra richness. Tamale pie is proof that you don't need a fancy tamale press to make a meal that's full of flavor. Simple, hearty, and always a crowd pleaser. For generations, baked cod was a dependable, no-fuss dinner, particularly in coastal and New England households. Light, flaky, and mild in flavor, cod was one of the most affordable fish available, making it a practical choice for families looking to put a nutritious meal on the table without overspending. Topped with a crisp breadcrumb and herb crust, this dish was both simple and satisfying, proof that great cooking didn't need to be complicated. Cod's popularity was tied to its abundance. Throughout much of the 20th century, fresh or frozen cod was readily available at grocery stores and fish markets, and it didn't require elaborate preparation. A coating of breadcrumbs, butter, and fresh herbs locked in moisture while creating a crunchy, golden brown topping. Baked rather than fried, this dish had a lighter texture, making it a favorite among those who wanted something hearty without being heavy. So why did it disappear? Overfishing led to shortages, making cod more expensive, and as frozen fish sticks and pre-breaded fillies flooded supermarkets, many home cooks stopped preparing fish from scratch. Once a staple of working-class kitchens, this hearty one-dish meal was built on the kind of ingredients that stretched a family's budget without sacrificing flavor. Cabbage, potatoes, and smoked sausage, three of the most economical and widely available foods, came together in layers, baked slowly in a rich mustard cream sauce. The result was a rustic, deeply satisfying dish that filled bellies and kept families warm through colder months. Cabbage was a practical ingredient, valued for its long shelf life and versatility. When paired with smoky seasoned sausage and starchy potatoes, it created a meal that was both inexpensive and packed with flavor. The mustard-infused cream sauce added a tangy richness, tying everything together. Some home cooks added a dash of vinegar for brightness, while others incorporated cheese for extra indulgence. No matter the variation, this dish was proof that humble ingredients could create something truly special. Why did it fall out of favor? The rise of prepackaged meals and low-carb trends made cabbage-heavy dishes less common, and as quick stovetop meals replaced slow-baked casseroles, this once popular dish faded from view. Rabbit stew is a beloved traditional dish in various cultures, renowned for its hearty and comforting nature. This stew typically features tender pieces of rabbit slow-cooked with onions, garlic, and aromatic herbs like rosemary or thyme, which subtly enhance the mild flavor of the rabbit. Additional vegetables such as carrots, celery, and potatoes often join the mix, creating a robust, one-pot meal. The stewing liquid, usually wine or stock, enriches the dish, lending depth and complexity as it simmers. Rabbit meat, known for its leanness and delicacy, benefits greatly from the slow cooking process, becoming incredibly tender and infused with the rich flavors of the broth and vegetables. Rabbit stew is especially appreciated during the colder months or in rural settings where rabbit is a common game meat. Pine needle tea is exactly what it sounds like, tea made from steeped pine needles. This beverage was often consumed for its supposed health benefits, including a high vitamin C content. During times when citrus fruits were scarce or expensive, pine needle tea provided a natural source of this essential nutrient. The flavor of pine needle tea is refreshing and slightly piney, with a hint of citrus. It's not the most conventional tea, but it has a certain rustic charm. However, it's not something you'll find on the shelves of your local tea shop. Pine needle tea is more of a survivalist or herbal remedy than a daily drink. While it hasn't become a mainstream favorite, it's still enjoyed by those who appreciate its unique flavor and natural benefits. Hamburger gravy over toast was born from tight weeks and nearly empty fridges. Ground beef, flour, and milk. That was all it needed to become something rich enough to stretch across a family. The beef browned, the flour went in, and the milk thickened into a smooth, creamy sauce that poured over toasted bread like comfort made visible. It was cheap, yes, but it never felt poor. The smell of it hit every corner of the house, a mix of butter and warmth that made everything feel fine for a while. Some added onions, others a splash of Worcestershire sauce, but it never asked for more than it had. Dinner was ready in minutes, and the plates came back clean every time. Moms liked that part most, the quiet proof that she had done enough. This was food that held a family together, even when the cupboards were thin. Scalloped ham and potatoes, a classic dish that brings together two of the most beloved comfort foods, tender ham and creamy, cheesy potatoes. This casserole has been a staple at family gatherings and Sunday dinners for generations, proving that simple ingredients can create something extraordinary. The dish's origins can be traced back to the mid-19th century, where scalloped potatoes, sliced potatoes baked in a rich, creamy sauce, became a popular sign. The addition of ham likely came later, as cooks sought to stretch their budget by incorporating leftover meats. The result was a filling, satisfying dish that combined the savory goodness of ham with the comforting texture of potatoes. Scalloped ham and potatoes became even more popular in the 20th century when convenience foods like canned soups and processed cheese made their way into American kitchens. The creamy sauce, often made from a blend of milk, butter, and cheese, is what binds the layers of ham and potatoes, creating a hearty casserole that's easy to make but feels like a special meal. Scalloped ham and potatoes is the ultimate use-it-all dish, because who doesn't love a meal where everything gets smothered in cheese? It's a dish that's perfect for feeding a crowd and always leaves everyone asking for seconds. Leftover turkey was once the foundation of creative home cooking. Long before frozen dinners and deli slices, resourceful cooks found ways to repurpose every part of a roasted bird. One of the most inventive solutions? A golden, bubbling gratin that transformed shredded turkey into something just as satisfying as the holiday feast itself. Sweet potatoes, naturally rich and slightly sweet, paired perfectly with the savory depth of turkey. Thinly sliced and layered, they acted as both a starch and a built-in flavor enhancer. A cheesy herbed cream sauce seeped into every bite, bringing a velvety richness that made this dish feel indulgent despite its humble origins. Some families added a pinch of nutmeg for warmth, while others topped it with breadcrumbs for a golden, crispy finish. For decades, this dish was a practical way to extend a meal and avoid food waste. Turkey was affordable, especially in the days when whole birds were purchased rather than prepackaged cuts. Sweet potatoes, widely available and inexpensive, provided both nutrition and flavor. As quick-fix meals and processed leftovers became the norm, dishes requiring careful layering and slow baking lost their appeal. Veal Prince Orloff is a lavish dish that captures the essence of French-Russian culinary elegance, named after the Russian diplomat Prince Orloff, who resided in France during the 19th century. Created by the renowned French chef Urbain Dubois, it aims to impress with its sophisticated layering and flavors. The dish features slices of roasted veal loin alternated with layers of sautéed mushrooms and onions, with slices of Mornay sauce-enriched eggplant interspersed throughout. It is then crowned with more Mornay sauce, baked until bubbly and golden. This intricate preparation not only showcases the delicate flavors of veal, but also the creamy texture of the Mornay sauce, making it a dish that stands out in both taste and presentation. Oven barbecue chicken legs were the sticky glory of weeknight dinners. They started with a pack of drumsticks, cheap, meaty, and always enough for everyone. The sauce came from a bottle, sweet and tangy, sometimes mixed with a splash of vinegar or brown sugar to make it taste homemade. The smell hit first, smoky, sweet, and slow-baked until the sauce turned thick and glossy. The skin crisped just right, caramelizing at the edges while the meat stayed tender underneath. It was a dinner made with no fuss, just trust in the oven's quiet work. The sound of that first bite, the pull of tender chicken against the glaze, was the sound of reward. Moms loved it because it fed many without costing much. It filled bellies, brought people to the table, and left sticky smiles behind. The kind of meal you lick your fingers after, grateful for the simple goodness of it all. The sauce left rings on the plates and napkins, proof of joy and appetite. The leftovers were even better, cold or reheated, eaten standing at the stove the next day. It was the kind of food that asked for nothing more than a paper towel and a moment of peace, the kind every working mother deserved. Potted meat is a canned meat product that was a staple in many households during tough times. Made from a mix of meats, including beef and pork, it's ground into a paste and seasoned. It's often used as a spread on crackers or bread, making it a quick and easy snack or meal component. Potted meat has a long shelf life, which makes it perfect for stocking pantries during uncertain times. It's not exactly gourmet fare, but it got the job done. However, in today's era of fresh whole foods, potted meat has fallen out of favor. It's the kind of thing you might find in a survival kit or on a camping trip, but not something you'd serve at a dinner party. Still, for those who grew up with it, potted meat holds a special place in the pantry of memories. A true testament to how simple ingredients can create something extraordinary, corn pudding casserole with a sweet custard base is a comforting classic. With its rich custardy texture and subtle sweetness, it's a comforting side that's just as at home at Thanksgiving as it is at a Sunday family dinner. Corn pudding has roots in early American cooking, influenced by Native American corn-based dishes like succotash. However, the casserole version, often made with a combination of cornmeal, eggs, milk, and sugar, emerged in the 19th century as settlers began adapting recipes to make use of what was readily available. The sweet custard base, made with eggs and cream or milk, gives the dish its signature smooth, slightly sweet texture that contrasts perfectly with the corn kernels. It's also a dish that evolved with convenience in mind. As canned creamed corn became widely available in the mid-20th century, many home cooks began using it to simplify preparation without sacrificing flavor. Corn pudding is a crowd pleaser, and its versatility allows for adjustments. Some might add a touch of cheese, while others prefer to keep it pure. For generations, lamb was a prized centerpiece of homecoming feasts and holiday gatherings. Its deep, rich flavor and fall-apart tenderness made it a dish reserved for special occasions, especially in families with European or Mediterranean roots. Slow roasting a lamb shoulder with garlic and fresh herbs was a time-honored tradition. Lamb was once far more common on American dinner tables than it is today. In the early 20th century, it was an affordable alternative to beef and pork, particularly in rural areas where small-scale farming was the norm. Shoulder cuts were especially budget-friendly, benefiting from long, slow cooking to break down tough fibers. Roasted low and slow with rosemary, thyme, and whole cloves of garlic, the meat absorbed deep, aromatic flavors while becoming melt-in-your-mouth tender. So why did it disappear from everyday meals? As industrial farming shifted American preferences toward beef and chicken, lamb fell out of favor. It became harder to find in grocery stores, and for many home cooks, its distinctive flavor was an acquired taste. Faster, more convenient proteins replaced slow-cooked roasts, and over time, this once popular dish faded into obscurity. Hardtack was often soaked in water or soup to soften it up before eating. It wasn't exactly tasty, but it provided the necessary calories to survive long journeys or tough times. Today, hardtack is more of a historical curiosity than a pantry staple. It's the kind of thing you might try once for the experience, but it's not something you'd want to eat regularly. It's a relic of a time when food was more about survival than enjoyment. Egg noodle stroganoff without beef was the creative fix for lean weeks. Mushrooms and onions replaced the meat, sautéed slow until golden before being folded into sour cream and broth. The noodles were cooked soft, catching every bit of sauce in their curls. It was creamy and comforting, a dish that felt indulgent even when it was born of necessity. The kitchen smelled rich, the kind of scent that made kids run to the table. It filled plates generously and hearts quietly. Moms took pride in this kind of invention, in turning limits into flavor. It was food that told the truth, that care was the main ingredient all along. The sauce shimmered as it cooled, clinging to the noodles like a small luxury. It was a dinner that reminded families that grace could be found in doing your best with what you had. Some added a pinch of paprika or a splash of milk to stretch the sauce. Others simply trusted the pan. No one left hungry, and that was all that mattered. Spanish rice with tomatoes and green peppers, a flavorful side dish that has graced American tables for decades. Despite its name, it's actually more of a Mexican-American creation, born out of the fusion of traditional Spanish and Mexican cooking. The rich, savory base comes from simmering rice in a seasoned tomato sauce, with green peppers adding a touch of sweetness and color. The origins of Spanish rice can be traced to the influence of the Spanish in Mexico during the colonial period. The use of rice as a staple ingredient spread throughout Latin America, evolving into countless variations. In the United States, especially during the mid-20th century, Spanish rice became a popular side dish to accompany everything from tacos to fried chicken. The addition of green peppers, onions, and garlic to the dish added layers of flavor that made it even more satisfying. Spanish rice with tomatoes and peppers is the side dish that's just as colorful as it is delicious. So much flavor, it almost steals the show. It's a versatile, easy-to-make dish that always pairs well with a variety of main courses. Once a humble staple of farmhouse kitchens, savory sweet onion pie was a testament to how simple ingredients could be transformed into something extraordinary. With its flaky crust, velvety custard, and layers of slow caramelized onions, this pie was both comforting and surprisingly elegant, a dish that fit just as well on a holiday table as it did at a casual family dinner. Onions have long been one of the most affordable and widely available vegetables, making them a practical choice for home cooks looking to stretch their budget. When cooked low and slow, their sharp bite mellowed into a deep, natural sweetness. Combined with eggs, cream, and sometimes a sprinkle of cheese, they created a rich, quiche-like filling that was both satisfying and economical. Some versions leaned into the southern tradition of sweet onions, using Vidalias to enhance the dish's natural sugars. So, why did this once popular pie disappear? As savory tarts and quiches became more associated with upscale brunches rather than home-cooked meals, hearty onion-based dishes faded from everyday menus. The rise of pre-made frozen quiches also contributed, making from-scratch versions less common. Turkey and rice skillet was a weeknight lifesaver, the kind of dinner that could appear from almost nothing. It began with bits of leftover turkey, chopped fine and browned in a single pan, with a handful of frozen vegetables, peas, carrots, corn, whatever was on hand. A scoop of rice went in next, soaking up every bit of flavor as it simmered with a little broth. The scent was soft and homey, the kind that filled the kitchen with quiet reassurance. Nothing about it was fancy, but everything about it worked. Moms leaned on it when time was short and energy was low, knowing it could feed a family for pennies. The rice puffed up tender, the vegetables brightened with salt and butter, and the turkey gave just enough richness to make it feel complete. It was balance in a skillet, light but satisfying, simple but full of heart. Some added soy sauce or onion powder to stretch its flavor. Others kept it plain, letting the rice and turkey speak for themselves. It tasted like peace after a long day, proof that even the most ordinary ingredients could make something wonderful when stirred with love. This creamy, savory casserole, ham tetrazzini with egg noodles, showcases how a few simple ingredients can be transformed into something truly special. While turkey tetrazzini is more commonly known, ham tetrazzini became a popular variation, especially for using up leftover holiday ham in a way that felt both indulgent and comforting. Named after Italian opera singer Luisa Tetrazzini, this dish originally featured chicken or turkey, often paired with a creamy sauce, mushrooms, and a variety of seasonings. The exact origin of ham tetrazzini is unclear, but the combination of a rich, buttery sauce and tender ham makes it a favorite for families seeking a hearty, filling meal. Egg noodles, thanks to their soft texture and ability to absorb sauces, are the perfect base for this casserole. When tossed with the ham and creamy sauce, they turn into a flavorful foundation that holds everything together. A sprinkle of Parmesan cheese on top before baking creates a golden, bubbly crust that takes the dish to another level. Ground beef hash was the sound of a skillet crackling at sunset. Potatoes, onions, and beef came together without a recipe, guided only by instinct and experience. Everything sizzled together until the potatoes browned and the onions turned sweet. A sprinkle of salt and pepper was all it needed, though some mothers tossed in a dash of ketchup or Worcestershire for depth. It was hearty, filling, and honest, the kind of dinner that didn't talk, just did its job. Every bite had texture, soft in the middle, crisp at the edges, and rich with flavor from the browned bits stuck to the pan. It was food meant to be eaten hot, straight from the skillet, with maybe a fried egg on top if you were lucky. Nothing about it was wasted. Nothing about it was delicate. It was survival turned delicious, the sound of care disguised as simplicity. Once a staple of dinner parties and homecoming feasts, this elegant yet simple side dish was a favorite among home cooks looking to add a touch of sophistication to their meals. Crisp, tender green beans, lightly sautéed in butter and finished with toasted almonds, struck the perfect balance between freshness and richness. Green beans were one of the most accessible vegetables in American kitchens. Whether fresh, frozen, or canned, they were affordable and widely available year-round. Almonds, though slightly more expensive, were used sparingly, adding a crunchy contrast without overwhelming the dish. The preparation was straightforward. The beans were quickly blanched to preserve their bright color and firm texture, then tossed in a buttery skillet with slivered almonds for a nutty, golden brown finish. Some recipes included a squeeze of lemon or a sprinkle of garlic for extra depth. But as convenience cooking took hold, green bean almondine slowly faded from dinner tables. Canned green bean casseroles, loaded with processed ingredients, became the new standard, and simple, fresh preparations were overlooked in favor of heavier, creamier alternatives. Salmon patties, a classic dish found in many American homes, offer a tasty and affordable way to enjoy fish. Often made with canned salmon, these patties are mixed with breadcrumbs, onions, and seasonings, then fried to golden perfection. The dish has roots in the 1940s, when canned fish became a popular pantry staple due to its long shelf life and affordability during tough economic times. Despite being simple, salmon patties are packed with protein, omega-3 fatty acids, and heart-healthy nutrients, making them both a tasty and nutritious choice. The secret to a great salmon patty lies in its texture, crispy on the outside, yet tender and flaky on the inside. Often paired with a generous helping of creamed peas, this dish takes on a comforting, homey feel. Creamed peas are made by cooking fresh or frozen peas in a creamy sauce, sometimes enhanced with butter, milk, and a touch of seasoning. The creamy, mild flavor of the peas balances the richness of the salmon patties, creating a perfectly matched duo. Salmon patties with creamed peas are the kind of comfort food that makes you think, "Why did I ever stop eating this?" It's an easy, satisfying meal that stood the test of time, offering comfort with every bite. Chicken fricassee was elegance on a dime, a creamy stovetop stew that made the kitchen smell like Sunday even on a Tuesday. Bone-in chicken simmered slow in a white sauce made from broth, flour, and a touch of milk until it turned velvety smooth. Carrots and peas joined in, bright against the pale gravy, filling the pot with color and comfort. The sauce thickened as it cooked, clinging to every piece of chicken until it looked like something straight out of a cookbook. But this was not luxury. This was love disguised as dinner. Moms learned to stretch every bit of flavor, using what they had to make something that tasted rich. The steam fogged the windows, the wooden spoon moved slow, and the smell said everything that words could not. It was the kind of meal that made you stop and breathe before taking that first bite. For years, cornbread stuffed pork tenderloin was a homecoming dinner favorite, combining the rich, juicy flavors of pork with the comforting, slightly sweet notes of cornbread dressing. It was the kind of meal that felt celebratory but was made with everyday ingredients. Pork tenderloin was an affordable cut, prized for its tenderness and quick cooking time. Cornbread, a staple in Southern and Midwestern kitchens, made the perfect stuffing, absorbing the juices from the meat while adding its signature crumbly texture. Sage and dried cranberries brought a hint of warmth and sweetness, making this dish a natural fit for fall and winter gatherings. Some versions included pecans for extra crunch, while others used sausage to double down on the savory depth. So why did this dish fade from dinner tables? As boneless, pre-seasoned pork cuts became common, elaborate stuffed roasts became less appealing to the average home cook. The extra steps of butterflying, filling, and tying up a tenderloin made it feel like a holiday dish rather than a weeknight option. But for those who appreciate the balance of savory pork and buttery cornbread, this is a recipe that deserves a second look, because some traditions are too good to leave behind. Fish sticks, those crispy, golden-breaded delights, have been a fixture of American family dinners since the mid-20th century. While their origins date back to the early 1950s, when commercial frozen food production boomed, fish sticks quickly became a go-to for busy families. Made from white fish, typically cod or pollock, these little rectangular pieces of seafood are battered and deep-fried to perfection, making them as crunchy on the outside as they are tender on the inside. The classic pairing of fish sticks with tartar sauce elevates the meal. Tartar sauce, a tangy combination of mayonnaise, pickles, and lemon juice, adds a creamy contrast to the crispy fish. While the sauce has its roots in French cuisine, it became a beloved accompaniment to fish and chips, and later to fish sticks in the U.S. On the side, coleslaw, a salad made from finely shredded raw cabbage, carrots, and a tangy dressing, has been a popular addition to fish dishes for generations. Its crisp texture and slightly sweet flavor balance out the richness of the fish and tartar sauce. Frankfurter supper stew was childhood fun served in a bowl. Sliced hot dogs bubbled in a pot of beans, corn, and tomatoes until everything thickened into a sweet, smoky stew. It was fast, cheap, and full of joy, the kind of meal that brought giggles to the table. Every spoonful was a mix of soft beans and tangy tomato, with the salt of the hot dogs tying it all together. It was the kind of dish that needed no sides and no apology, only bread to soak up what was left. The pot emptied fast, proof that satisfaction did not need sophistication. It was family food in its truest form, humble, hearty, and made for laughter. The hot dogs curled slightly at the edges, soaking up all that tomato flavor until they glistened. Kids loved it for its sweetness. Parents loved it because it filled everyone up for next to nothing. It was the sound of spoons clinking, the sight of empty bowls, the comfort of knowing that even on the leanest nights there was joy in sharing what you had. Slow cooking was once an art form, and few dishes showcased it better than a well-braised short rib. This was a meal that required patience. Tough cuts of beef transformed into fork-tender perfection after hours of simmering in a rich, aromatic sauce. Deeply savory, fall-off-the-bone ribs were the reward for anyone willing to wait. Short ribs were once considered a budget cut, prized not for their tenderness, but for their flavor when cooked properly. Unlike steaks or roasts, these ribs needed time and care to break down the tough connective tissue. The solution was a slow braise in red wine, broth, and aromatic vegetables. Over several hours, the flavors deepened, and the meat absorbed every note of the wine's richness, creating a dish that was as elegant as it was hearty. For much of the 20th century, this was a homecoming dinner classic, perfect for cold evenings and special occasions. But as cooking habits changed, so did the popularity of slow-braised dishes. People wanted quick meals, not ones that took all afternoon. Short ribs also became more expensive as demand for premium beef cuts soared, making them less common in everyday kitchens. A dish that combines the simplicity of ground beef and rice with the vibrant crunch of bell peppers, stuffed bell peppers have been a staple in American kitchens for decades. This hearty meal has roots in both European and Mediterranean cuisines, where stuffed vegetables have been enjoyed for centuries. In the U.S., it became a popular choice for families during the 1950s, with ground beef as the primary filling. The dish is incredibly versatile. Ground beef is often seasoned with onions, garlic, and spices, then mixed with rice to create a filling that's packed into hollowed-out bell peppers. The peppers, typically red, green, or yellow, hold the filling and become tender when baked, infusing the entire dish with a sweet, smoky flavor. While some recipes call for tomato sauce or cheese to top the peppers, others leave them as is, letting the natural flavors shine through. This dish is perfect for using up leftovers or for a simple, budget-friendly dinner. Stuffed bell peppers are like a dinner with everything in one package, just like a meal wrapped up with a bow. Hot dish with creamed corn was the beating heart of Midwestern comfort. It was ground beef browned in a skillet, mixed with egg noodles, creamed corn, and soup from a can until everything became one perfect bubbling whole. The top browned just enough to crisp, giving way to a creamy, rich center that stuck to your ribs. It was warm, predictable, and perfect. The kind of food that could make you forget about the wind outside or the bills waiting on the counter. Every family had their own version. Some added cheese, others green beans. But they all shared the same truth. It was cheap, filling, and made with love. In that small act of stirring everything together, working moms turned exhaustion into nourishment. It was proof that simplicity could hold as much love as any feast. The edges baked just firm enough to give each serving a crust, a golden seal on a hard day's effort. When it hit the table, plates were filled before the prayer was even finished. It was food that needed no words, only gratitude. Each spoonful carried the rhythm of routine and the comfort of knowing that even in life's hurry, there was still room for care. A staple of potlucks, homecoming dinners, and weeknight meals, this creamy, cheesy bake was the ultimate comfort food. With its simple ingredients and easy preparation, cheddar broccoli rice bake became a go-to for busy home cooks looking to feed a crowd on a budget. Rice was one of the most affordable pantry staples, stretching meals and adding heartiness without costing much. Broccoli, whether fresh or frozen, provided a touch of green and a hint of nutrition. But the real star was the cheese sauce, a rich, velvety mixture made with cheddar, milk, and often a can of condensed soup for convenience. Some variations added a crunchy topping like buttered breadcrumbs or crushed crackers for an extra layer of texture. This dish thrived in the 1970s and 80s when casseroles dominated American kitchens. But as fresh vegetables and from-scratch cooking made a comeback, cream-based bakes fell out of favor. The rise of quick, microwavable sides also played a role. Why spend time layering and baking when a bag of steamed broccoli and instant rice could be ready in minutes? For those who grew up with its bubbling, cheesy goodness straight from the oven, this classic deserves a second look. When it comes to simple yet elegant meals, few combinations can match the light, flaky fish paired with the richness of lemon butter and the crispness of asparagus. Baked cod or halibut are perfect choices for this dish. Both are mild white fish that take well to a variety of seasonings, but it's the lemon butter that steals the show, bringing a burst of freshness that complements the delicate flavors of the fish. Cod and halibut have been long favorites in American kitchens, especially along the coastlines where they are abundant. Cod, with its firm texture, has been a staple in New England since the colonial era, while halibut is prized for its mild taste and large fillets. Both fish are low in fat but high in protein, making them an excellent choice for a healthy, satisfying dinner. Asparagus, often served alongside fish in this dish, is packed with vitamins and minerals, making it a nutritious addition. The key to a great asparagus side is cooking it just enough to maintain its crunch, while the lemon butter ties everything together in perfect harmony. A meal like this is a reminder that simple ingredients can create something extraordinary. Canned ham glazed bake turned an ordinary evening into something that felt almost like a holiday. The ham came from a can, sliced thick and arranged neatly in a baking dish, each piece topped with a pineapple ring and a cherry in the middle. Brown sugar and mustard melted together into a glossy glaze that bubbled down the sides, caramelizing as it baked. The scent that filled the kitchen was sweet, smoky, and cheerful, the kind of smell that made the smallest dinner feel like celebration. Working moms loved it because it looked fancy but cost little, and it could feed a table full of hungry faces without complaint. The glaze thickened at the corners, the ham crisped around the edges, and the pineapple turned golden, soft, and fragrant. Every forkful tasted like nostalgia, sweet and salty, simple and proud. Some families made it on Sundays, others on Tuesdays, but it always brought joy. The leftover syrup in the pan was spooned over rice or mashed potatoes, nothing ever wasted. It was proof that even convenience could hold warmth, and that love did not need to be slow to be real. Few dishes capture the culinary experimentation of the late 20th century quite like this one. With its bold combination of prunes, olives, capers, and white wine, chicken marbella was a breakout star of the 1980s dinner party scene. It was elegant, unexpected, and a perfect example of how sweet and savory flavors could work together in harmony. The recipe originated from the Silver Palette Cookbook, a landmark 1982 publication that introduced home cooks to sophisticated yet approachable recipes. What set this dish apart was its unique balance: briny olives and capers cut through the sweetness of prunes, while white wine and vinegar created a tangy, aromatic sauce. Chicken, an affordable and versatile protein, absorbed the flavors beautifully as it marinated overnight before baking. Despite its popularity, chicken marbella eventually faded from home kitchens. As the 1990s brought a shift toward faster, simpler meals, dishes requiring overnight marination and complex flavor profiles became less common. The rise of international cuisine also introduced new, trendy flavors that overshadowed this once-beloved classic. Steamed clams, a beloved dish especially along the coasts of New England, have been enjoyed for generations. This dish is a true celebration of seafood, as fresh clams are steamed until tender, absorbing all the flavors of the broth, often seasoned with garlic, herbs, and a splash of white wine or broth. Clams, which are bivalve mollusks, have been a staple in coastal cuisine for centuries, with Native Americans harvesting them long before European settlers arrived. The joy of eating steamed clams comes from their delicate texture and briny sweetness. The perfect clam should pop open easily when steamed, a sign that it's cooked just right. Paired with a slice of hearty brown bread and a dollop of butter, this dish becomes a complete, satisfying meal. The richness of the butter and the rustic flavor of the brown bread perfectly complement the clam's natural saltiness, creating a balanced, indulgent experience. Steamed clams with brown bread, because sometimes the best meals are the ones that come with their own dipping sauce. The dish reflects the simplicity of coastal living, proving that the freshest ingredients often make the most memorable meals. Whether served as an appetizer or a main course, steamed clams with brown bread and butter remain a timeless favorite, offering a taste of the sea with every bite. Cheeseburger pie was comfort disguised as play. Ground beef browned in a skillet mixed with onion, cheese, and a pour of biscuit batter that baked into a crust both soft and golden. The oven turned it into something special, rich, melty, and nostalgic all at once. It looked like pie but tasted like dinner, a trick that kids adored. The top puffed slightly as it baked, filling the house with the smell of cheddar and bread. It came out bubbly and warm, easy to slice, and even easier to love. For working moms, it was dinner done fast, full of flavor and full of heart. It made something ordinary feel brand new, the kind of dish that erased the day's exhaustion in one bite. The leftovers reheated perfectly, if there were any. It was comfort by the panful, the taste of ingenuity, family, and the quiet pride of doing a lot with a little. Goulash has become a favorite in many American households, a dish that combines the comfort of macaroni with the heartiness of ground beef. Despite the name, this American version of goulash is far different from its Hungarian roots, where the original dish was a rich stew made with beef, paprika, and vegetables. The American version, often made with macaroni, tomatoes, and ground beef, became popular during the mid-20th century, particularly in households looking for a quick, filling, and affordable dinner. The beauty of goulash lies in its simplicity. Ground beef is browned and simmered with onions, garlic, and seasonings, then mixed with cooked macaroni and canned tomatoes. This one-pot meal is easy to make and adaptable to whatever ingredients are on hand, whether it's adding a dash of hot sauce, swapping tomatoes for tomato paste, or stirring in some cheese for extra richness. Goulash quickly became a go-to comfort food for busy families, and it's still a staple today. It's the kind of dish you can throw together in no time, and it always feels like a warm hug in a bowl. Which forgotten working man's supper would you bring back to your table? Share the meal that kept your family going in the comments. Hit like and subscribe so we can keep honoring the dinners that built this country.